Hey guys, did a real quick Instagram video and stuck it up on Facebook as well. And one of the things that I kind of talked about was all of this heat that is coming against this particular officer for not going into the school, and that many of the people who are critical are the types of people that I kind of deal with on a day-to-day basis. They're the real loud, boisterous. They're the first ones to let you know just how badass they are. But then when it comes time to doing something like combatives or something like that, it's like, oh, my quad hurts or something like this, and they don't ever show up, or they always seem to have an excuse or something to do. The fact of the matter is that most of us don't really like to be put in situations where we see our shortcomings, where we see our weaknesses, and unfortunately, we saw that in the case of this particular officer. The guy was, whatever it was, 35, 34, or something like that years. I mean, over 30 years on the police force, was once kind of told that, or once awarded like Resource Officer of the Year and so on and so forth. So the guy was obviously good at his job, but he's one of those types of situations where if you're not mentally prepared for the most extreme type of circumstance, then you don't really know how you're going to react. And a lot of times what we have a tendency to do is we have a tendency to look outward. We see things on the news, we see things, we see evil, and it's always out there, and we never stop and look inward and say, am I capable of doing that? We look at ISIS and they do these horrific things to people, and then we never really look inwardly and say, am I capable of that kind of barbarism? And I think if most of us are honest, under certain circumstances, we would have to answer yes to that, because the fact of the matter is that we are inherently evil. We are not inherently good. We have to be taught good. I don't have to teach a baby to lie. When that baby is born, he learns how to manipulate and how to fake cry and things like that to get the things that he wants to do. You don't have to teach a baby to do this. We are inherently sinful beings. That gets off on a whole nother thing. The point being is that the longer we spend time basically debating woulda, shoulda, coulda, the longer it's going to take for us to basically come to grips with the reality that everyone is responsible for their own personal security. I saw an interview with one of the dads. He was speaking in front of the president. He was talking about, this is my daughter, I'll never see her before, or I'll never see her again, and things like that. And I'm going to say this right up front. I have deep compassion for these people who have lost children. That's something that I wouldn't wish on anyone. But by the same token, I want you to hear the tone of the voice. It's, President, what are you going to do? Officers, what are you going to do? It's always projecting outward. It's always that need to find somebody out there to blame, because none of us want to stop and take a look inwardly and say, what could I have done to prevent that type of circumstance? We find ourselves in difficult circumstances all the time, but how many of us actually stop for a minute and say, what did I do to potentially bring this on myself? Instead, what we do is we kind of adopt a victim mentality where, all of these people are coming against me, and we're always, these are evil people out there, and we're never actually looking inwardly. One of the things that, whenever I run a security detail, one of the things that I teach my guys is that, look, security is an inherently boring job. It's a lot of standing around doing nothing. I don't care how armed you are. You could have all the Gucci gear and stuff like that and be right in the middle of a war zone. It's the same exact job that the mall cop guy does. It just may be in a slightly more hostile environment. But the reality is it's not as high speed, door kicking, fancy, glamorous as everybody kind of makes it out to be. And believe me, I've done it. The fact is that one of the things that I really try and instill in guys, whenever I put him at a post and I tell him, this is your job, this is your area of operation, stuff like that, this is where you're going to be working, is I try and impress on him the fact that, look, you don't want to be where that officer is. You don't want to be that guy that somebody managed to get past your line and got inside of our fob and started killing people. You don't want to be that guy who is working on that wall when that initial onslaught comes up and you completely missed it, and they were able to basically close distance onto our fence line before you could even respond. You don't want to be that guy who is responsible for the death of everyone else. So the point being is that you have to fight against that complacency. You have to fight against that urge to basically just say, well, it's not going to happen to me. Kind of as that dad said, you know, before the president the other day. You know, he said that he had basically just adopted this mentality that, well, it won't happen to me. Well, the fact of the matter is, you know, if you look at the stats going all the way back, you know, Clinton and Bush Sr. and Reagan and stuff like that, you look at school shootings are not anything new. They are on the rise, but they're not anything new. They have happened in the past. How many school shootings have to occur before parents start getting involved and start sitting down with their kids and playing a free DHS video talking about run, hide, fight? You know, sitting down and talking to them and saying, look, you know, this is what you do. How much time, you know, do you have to actually spend to watch this? I think it's like a 5 or 7 minute video or something like that. And sit down with your kids and take personal responsibility for your own children and say, look, in the event that this happens, this is what you do. Maybe you role play it out in your house, or maybe when you're in your church, you kind of, you know, you run some kind of drills or something like that. Like, hey, if something were to happen here, which way are you going to go? It's about taking personal responsibility. All right. It's about not projecting our problems outward and saying the problem is always out there. It's about looking inward and saying, what could I do to prevent this from happening to me? Because the reality is that dad is feeling right now the same thing that that officer is feeling, and the same thing that I teach my security guys. You don't want to be that guy. And that is that you become complacent, you drop the ball, you think it's never going to happen to you, it's never going to happen on your watch, and all of a sudden it does. And now you're responsible for the death of 17 children, or you're responsible for the death of maybe your child, and you're left sitting there for the rest of your life trying to figure out, what could I have done to have prevented this from happening? And that's not a feeling that that I wish on anyone. So I would encourage you guys, start looking introspectively, start looking inward and stuff, start asking those hard questions. You know, why am I not signing up for combatives? Look, this is not a sales thing. I don't care whether you train with me. There's a number of places you can train. Sheepdog has got good places. Shivwork has got good places. C4 Combatives has got good places. There is good, legitimate, solid guys out there who are teaching. There is no excuse whatsoever why you go out and buy your 13th AR-15 and you haven't taken the first class on how to actually fight with your pistol. Because the reality is you will never be in a position where you're actually carrying that AR-15 unless you're military, law enforcement, or a contractor. So, you know, you don't know how to fight with a pistol, why carry one? I tell my guys all the time, if you're carrying a pistol and you have had no combatives training, you have no actual close, you know, CQC training with that pistol, all you're doing is you're carrying your murderer's weapon for them. Because the vast majority of officers who are shot with their own weapons. So if these guys have training and you don't, how long are you going to last in a fight against somebody who is not afraid of your pistol? How long are you going to last in that situation? And we've played this out in force-on-force training all the time, and I can tell you right now, it's a whole lot harder to shoot people who are not intending on being shot. That's a difficult prospect. Guys who don't run away from you, but they charge in. It's a whole lot harder to shoot somebody like that. And when you're talking about kind of low-income inner-city youth, you know, things like that, guys who grow up in gang culture and stuff like that, and they're not afraid of guns, and they will actually charge you down if you pull your pistol, you're going to lose that fight if you've got no kind of training. So don't be in that situation. Don't be in that place where you're like, you know, what could I have done to have prevented this this horrific situation from happening? There's literally just a whole slew of places where you can go to get training. Get training. You know, I mean, what does it cost you? So, and what does that cost in comparison to the life of a loved one or the life of even a complete stranger? So, all right, you guys train hard.